Yes.
But like the comparison, like with me and some of the other guys.
So that'd be something neat to see, the Harper Centers.
The Pirates playing in Williamsport was.
Welcome back to the third period. This third period, we're going to talk first overall draft picks in going into the Hall of Fame, or in the Hall of Fame, I should say. And what a lot of people don't realize is first round draft picks don't normally make it.
No. For every John Elway, there's a Ryan Leaf.
Way to put it. That's a way to put it. Because if you think about it, from when the first draft started in the respective sport, that's a lot of years, but only a select few, of course, always make the Hall of Fame in general.
Right.
But first rounders normally don't make it. Like, let's say baseball. The first draft was 1965. First draft in the NFL was 1936. NBA was 1947. NHL was 1963. And out of all those...
Hold on, real quick. So, the two oldest sports leagues had their drafts begin the latest.
Pretty much.
Interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just found that interesting because
it's just how it is. It's just
NHL and MLB are very steeped in history, and they didn't have their drafts until very, very many years later.
And NBA was 47, NFL was 36. And the amateur drafts, of course, which are still going on till this day.
Right. 65
for the MLB, 63 for the NHL. And what's funny is even for the NHL, out of all those years of the drafts, 8 first-round draft picks were in. 8.
So,
you would think these numbers would be kind of higher because it's first-round draft pick. They're supposed to be, the best of the best coming out of their respective college or scout. Supposed to be. The NFL has 14. Now these are currently in the Hall of Fame, not first overalls going to the Hall of Fame eventually. Like, let's say Crosby, Ovechkin, things like that.
Right.
These are players that are actually been in. Now, Jason, you're going to love this one. MLB, I think the number I found was 3.
Well, and looking at the list, those are 3 really great ball players. Even with one being a Philly killer, he's still a great ball player.
And the NBA has 19. So you would think, being number 1 draft picks, the first, they're supposed to be the cream of the crop. They're supposed to be the ones that are, showcase high talent. Don't even make it to the pros sometimes. Let's say the NHL. Some draft picks don't even make it to the NHL. They get stuck in the farm system.
Right. So one of the names on the NHL one that stood out for me, and I just want to chat about that for a second, was Mario Lemieux. He's the original Mr. Penguin, phenomenal athlete.
Super Mario
has to leave the sport at his peak because of cancer.
Yeah, not like he chose to do it. It was medical reasons.
Beats cancer, comes back, and and finishes up a great career.
And
that alone is Hall of Fame worthy in my book.
And not just playing to where you would think after cancer you won't play at the level you were. But before cancer, no, he was playing at a level that he was at before cancer. It wasn't like he, lowered his game. No, he was playing, and for a man of his size, for what he did on the ice, and like I said, fighting cancer, coming back, and still playing at that high competitive level, yeah, that is highly Hall of Fame worthy for sure. And what's funny is people who think Wayne Gretzky is on this list. No, he is not. He was never drafted. So I know some people probably think because it's Wayne Gretzky, he's first overall. He was never drafted. So he's not on the list.
Well, I mean, if anyone knows the NBA, Michael Jordan wasn't the first pick of his draft either. Very similar to Lemieux on the NBA list would be Magic Johnson. He had to leave the sport for medical reasons. His was testing HIV positive. And conversely, when he did come back, he was not able to play at the same level that he did. But the fact of the matter was he at least was able to eventually go out on his terms.
Yeah.
And that had no bearing on him going into the Hall of Fame. He was a Hall of Famer whether he had that final run or not. But it's still, like Lemieux, they were able to go out on their terms, even with their medical issues, which to me speaks highly of their competitiveness and their mental and physical toughness.
Well, the fact that he came back from that just to play in general, not just come back, but just to, come back and play and be able to do it. Because some players, they go out on injury, that's it, they're done. They don't come back. I mean, how many times have we seen that in general players, not just first rounders, but in general players, how many times they don't come back due to some type of injury.
Yeah.
But the fact that him, Lemieux, were able to do so, that speaks volume.
It really does. It really does.
Well, yeah, I just find this interesting, just an interesting thing for the first overall picks going to the Hall of Fame and the low numbers.
Well, and I think that speaks more towards, I think with all sports, the number one draft pick, especially for professional sports, the number one draft pick is almost overrated. Valued. We can say overrated. I was just looking at overvalued. I mean, again, Ryan Leaf was supposed to be the next big thing, and he was a huge bust. No offense to Ryan Leaf, it's just you can have all the talent in the world, but if you can't handle this speaks back to our first round. If you can't handle the competition, you can't handle the pressure, the talent isn't going to supersede that.
No, you're not going to be able to take it.
And I mean, some of the best players ever are people who were drafted very late in their drafts. I mean, we went about this with Tom Brady.
Yeah, I was going to say Tom Brady. I mean, he went way late in his draft, and look what he's
the poster boy for that. But I mean, he's not the only one.
No. And the fact that you see a lot of, we did an episode where Hall of Famers, how many went undrafted?
Or I think it was late in the late rounds.
Yeah. These ones where they went late rounds or someone undrafted.
And I think, especially with MLB's draft is what it is. It's not like a hyped up draft. It's not must-see TV like the NFL draft or the NBA draft. But I think the fact that there's only 3, I think speaks more towards the parity in baseball's scouting of prospects, I guess is the best way to put it. Because I think anyone, if they have the right drive and the right hustle and the right talent in baseball, can go from minors to majors and make an impact. It's going to be tough to do it, but it can be done. You don't have to be the top draft pick to be a Hall of Famer in baseball. Whereas I think, with the NFL, and especially with the NBA, with the most, if you're 9 times out of 10, 5 times out of 10, your number one draft pick might be a future Hall of Famer. I mean, my God, look at the tear in the 80s. 82 is James Worthy. 83, Ralph Sampson. 84, Hakeem Olajuwon. 85, Patrick Ewing. 87, David Robinson. That's a good chunk of the 1980s where the first round draft pick went
Chris
to the
Webber,
Hall of Fame.
83.
93.
Or no. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay.
My typing is hard.
You're all right.
That's debatable. But yeah, I mean, just 19 in general for the NBA, like you said, the run in the 80s. I mean, hell, even the 90s. Chris Webber, Shaquille O'Neal, Allen Iverson, Tim Duncan.
We talked about Tim Duncan earlier previously on the show. He was drafted number 1 in '97, and the next season, 2 seasons later, he was the same day he was drafted. He was winning the MVP in the championship with David Robinson, because they were on the Spurs together.
I just find it very interesting, and which is why we brought that up when we did that today in sports, that it was to the day a number 1 draft pick to the day won a championship 2 years later.
But now think about that. Robinson, 87, drafted the Spurs. Duncan, 97, drafted the Spurs. Won the championship together.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Because I know for the NBA, I believe it's 4 seasons. After 4 seasons, you're eligible for the Hall of Fame. 5 for baseball, 5 for the NFL, and 3 for hockey for the eligibilities.
Yeah, because in the next few years, for MLB, Rollins and Utley will be eligible.
Oof, that'd be nice if they made it.
I think Rollins has the better shot. I think Utley's deserving to go in. I'm partial, though. I'm a big Utley fan. I like his work ethic. I like his hustle. But the dude played baseball the way baseball used to be played in a time when it wasn't played that way. Right.
You played hard.
And you know what? And he did it totally unconscious of the fact that that's what Philadelphia sports fans want. I mean, that's how he became a hero and a legend in Philly, was because he played his heart out every game.
Well, yeah, that's all. I mean, he always did that. And that's Philadelphia in general, that wants that grit, that wants that way to play in any of the sports, whether it be baseball, football, or hockey, basketball. They want that hard nose go. Look at hockey with the Broad Street Bullies.
And I think that's why Phillies fans haven't turned on Harper yet. I think because he plays 100 miles an hour every game in the outfield, and he's you see the work ethic. It's one thing if you get that contract and you're a prima donna like an Alex Rodriguez. He'd have been eaten alive in Philly. Mm-hmm. He'd have been demanding a trade like within 2 seasons. Whereas
you're giving him too much credit for that.
Whereas Harper, he doesn't come in with a prima donna attitude. He comes in and he hustles. And he steps
he does hustle.
And, all power to him. But I think that's why the fans, it was predicted they turn on him immediately, and they never did.
Well, yeah, because everybody thought, being that he was in Washington, he was that prima donna. When
I have my theories on Harper's time in Washington. I do. I think I'm of the belief that I think the Nats looked at him as a hired gun, and he was going to be X, Y, and Z and do this and do that. Whereas I think on the Phils, he's looked at as a baseball player. He's not looked at as a superstar, which he is, but the Phils,
they don't treat him as such.
They don't treat him as a superstar. They don't single him out on that team. So, whereas in Washington, it was a lot of Harper. In Philly, it's you got Harper, you got Hoskins, you got Real Muto, you got Wheeler, you got Nola, you got
a list.
Kutch, you got Segura, you
have a list of names that actually play. You have a list of names that are reliable.
You have people who constantly stand out, and it wasn't until they got Rendon and they got a couple other players where it wasn't just Harper who had to stand out in Washington. But him leaving, I think, was probably good for him and good for the organization.
A year later, they won the World Series.
And I think, some guys just excel with a change of scenery.
Oh, yeah, it's just any sport with that. Yeah, no, I just figured this was an interesting thing to talk about because of how many times that you see these number 1 draft picks and they don't even make it to even the pros, they don't even see play. I mean, the NFL, you may be number one, you may ride the bench, you may go in maybe once in a while if your team's up by a lot.
Now, here's something to think about, and it's something we've kind of talked about before. So, out of those 4 leagues, 3 of them have developmental leagues.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL doesn't. So you could take a situation where your number 1 draft pick maybe can't cut it at the pro level at this moment, but that doesn't mean that they can't cut it on a minor league level.
Yeah, I mean, how many players that went to like the Canadian Football League?
A lot of players have got. Well, Doug Flutie.
Yeah,
he was one. Doug Flutie played in the USFL and the CFL before he became Doug Flutie in the NFL. Jesus. Yeah, I mean, Steve Young played in the USFL before he was the starting quarterback for the Niners. Oh God, I'm blanking on his name. Shoot. Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly played for Houston, the Houston Gamblers in the USFL before he played for in the NFL. And actually, so supposedly, going off on a tangent here, supposedly in the USFL, the Houston Gamblers and the LA Express, captained by Kelly and Young respectively, played the greatest football game no one ever saw.
Ugh.
Because it was not the main game for that week on ABC. But supposedly for the people who were there, and even Young and Kelly have said, it was the greatest game that each other have ever played against each other.
Too bad nobody outside.
And no one saw it.
Too bad anybody outside
unless
that
you were
stadium.
There.
Anybody outside that stadium. Nope.
And I think it was in LA, and based on what I know, the LA Express didn't draw a dime. So there might have been like 50 people in that cavernous 100,000 seat Olympic Stadium.
That's craziness.
Football needs a developmental league. The NFL needs a developmental league.
They do. I mean, and not just college football, because that's not a developmental league.
No.
College football is not a developmental league. College football is a way to go from one to another. And if they're good enough to go, to make that jump.
And here's the thing. I'm a firm believer that there is an audience that will watch spring football.
Yeah, we've had that discussion once before, and there is a lot of mixed reviews on that, because some people are like, really, football again? More yet? And some people, yes, football all year round.
Right.
So it's going to be a double-edged sword.
I think the mistake a lot of people who try to launch leagues in the spring make is the USFL was the only one who really did it with any success, and they only lasted 3 years because after that 3rd season, they were going to try and compete with the NFL, which was a dumb move on their part. Because they had an audience for spring football. In their case, what really undid them was they grew too fast. Had they stayed to 8 teams for a couple of seasons, they probably would have been fine, but they grew to like 16 in 3 seasons. But like with the AAF, I think there was the Alliance of American Football, and with the XFL, they tried to be a major sports league too soon. So, yeah, it's great you have a Fox contract and an ABC contract and an ESPN contract. But maybe have your teams have a regional contract. Be on a Sportsnet Colorado if you're in Colorado. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Instead of shooting for the moon, find what works and will help you grow for your success.
Well, I know I think it's next year, the XFL soon coming.
I think they're pushed back another year. I think they're going to be 2023
next year.
now.
Oh, well, I actually looked up. It still says 22.
Oh, does it 22? Okay.
Yeah, that's what I literally just looked it up now, and I've just been seeing 22.
Okay, that's fine.
22. Then I got another one stating 22 return on hold. So who knows when it could be. It could be 22, 23, but that could turn into something maybe for the NFL as a developmental. But you never know. It's you kind of have to look at the brighter side of that. Can it be done? Sure. If
will
done
it be
right,
done? Who knows?
Probably. My guess is no. That's my guess. But yeah, I figured this third period would be interesting because of just how many number one draft picks are there and how many make it to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking in the first period, the small sample size of professional athletes compared to that percentage who might experience mental health issues. This is an even smaller percentage of the overall population of pro athletes.
Well, baseball in general, 3.
Yeah.
Howard Baines, I think I said his name right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Howard Baines, Ken Griffey Jr., Chipper Jones. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
3 players from a draft that started back in 1965. 3.
Griffey, another Dan Marino.
Yeah.
Never got the big one.
Never no title, but
that's a future third period. Best players to never win.
Hall of Famers that never won a title.
Or best players, Hall of Famers never won a title. Yeah, that's a great topic.
That would be, because that's probably a big list that players you would think just because of how great they played.
Big list, yeah.
Well, I can name a few right off the bat that actually played in championships but never won, but went to the Hall of Fame. I mean, in hockey alone, you got John Van Beesbrook, played for Florida, played for Philly, but when he was in Florida, he lost. They lost to Colorado in '96. They got swept. Game 4 of that game, 3 overtimes. Any score was 1-0.
Jesus.
Pavel Bure lost. Vancouver lost to the Rangers in '94. So just those 2 alone.
Yeah.
So on that note, that'd be the end of the third period. Yeah. It was an interesting one. Interesting third.
Yeah, that was a fun topic.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, you'd think there'd be a lot more, but
first round draft picks tend to not go the way the teams predict they will go.
No, some do, but for baseball, no.
With that, let's wrap this up here. You can catch me every month on the Philly Baseball Together podcast with my co-host Tori. Once a month, we'll bring you our thoughts on the Phils. That's under the Baseball Together Podcast Network umbrella. Our episode was recorded Monday, and it was uploaded Monday. So that one's already up. We talked about the Phils trade deadline and the trades that were made before the deadline and at the deadline. Check it out. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for joining us for episode 26 of the Not Another Sports podcast. You can find us online at facebook.com/notanothersportspod. Oh, here we go. Twitter at Not Another Sport 1, Instagram NASPod20, TikTok NASPod20, and you can also find us on YouTube. Please feel free to like, comment, message us, hit us up at any of those outlets you can find us. The Not Another Sports podcast is available for streaming or download at Anchor.fm, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. With that, I'm Jason.
I'm David.
And we'll talk with you next time.
Have a good one.